Hi, everyone. I am back, and I wanted to talk tonight a lot about I want to kind of continue the conversation around Cindy Watts. I want to continue around the why we're so caught up energetically in this case, if you will, and give you some insights from my point of view and perhaps hear yours. I've been really enjoying reading people's feedback and going, oh gosh, yes, you're right. A lot of people mentioned that Nicole was definitely alpha, and I was like, yeah, you guys are right. So I took some notes because I wanted to be on point. I've been a little ill, so don't get too close to me. I'm kind of sick. So few things that I want to tell you about. And part of the thing that I want to start with is one of the reasons I think that we are very, and I want to say we as a universal we, many of us, I know for me, it has been a very unsettling case. And I think it's because I know Shanann. I mean, I've been in her house. Think about this. From the very first moment many of us saw this case, we saw it from the point of view of the best friend. So think about that. We're following Nicole, right, around her best friend's house, right? And the truth is that we're getting the different stories. So we know already, don't even listen to Chris. It's like, oh, I got the call. I came right home. He like hung up on her. She was the driving force. And this is such an important thing, I think, for all of us to look at is how often people go silent when bad things happen. But Nicole, she just did not give up. I'm getting truth bumps. So a couple things that I want to say is that I got some mentions that some people mentioned, oh, blaming the parents. And this is not about blame. And somebody else said, and I thought it was really great, and I'm going to start shouting out some names too, because I think it's so important. I don't think we're blaming anyone. I think we're looking for answers. I think we're looking for, as I like to say, drilling down and getting to what's really going on underneath everything, because we have such crap talk. We have like, and forgive me because I'm going to say some of it, we have what I call buzzwords, right? So we say things like, he's a narcissist, or he's a beta, she's an alpha, she's, pushy, she's controlling. And the truth is, when I was growing up, my dad said, I remember one of my dad's best friends said to him, your daughter's very controlling. My father looked at him and said, who isn't? So I think, when we look at some of this terminology we're putting on Shanann and Chris's family, right? It's more about discovering what those terms really mean now, not what they meant 10, 20, 30 years ago, even 10 minutes ago. Because I think if we really look at this, and this is something, I'm going to get back to Cindy in a minute, but I think one of the things we really witnessed with Shanann, and this is kind of a shout out to her too, we watched her struggle. We watched her endow this man with wonderful qualities. Even in one of his videos, I think it was the second one where he gives some interview to the news, and they mention his shirt, and he says, oh yeah, I think Shanann got this on Amazon, or she knows it's my favorite. And I thought, this woman probably was working so hard in overtime to keep this man happy. Can you imagine the dances she had to do? Because once someone like that gets you hooked in, and I saw this happen with a friend of mine recently, where what begins to happen is, as women, we really are told that our value is around having this perfect American dream, right? So we have this dream of this beautiful home, and we saw their home. And we went in their home. We saw their kitchen. How many of you watched Shanann's videos? I know I did. And I was like, girl, she had me going, I was like, wow, maybe this stuff is good. I'm looking at it. No, I'm not buying it. But I think what I'm saying is that we liked her in some ways. And those of us that are curious about it and stay in it, because I've got to tell you this. Shanann's somebody I would have liked. I really liked her on the videos, and I really liked her best friend, because here's a woman that didn't give up no matter what was going on. And I think we all want to be loved like that, if you really think about it. So let's look at this American dream, because, you know, I think that, and I took a lot of notes because I wanted to get to a few things that I think are important. So many of us, as I mentioned, want this American dream. And I think Shanann was grabbing that against all the odds. And we have to look at, you know, we'll get into the tragedy in a moment, but we also watched her struggles. You know, how many times did she say on her videos, oh, I'm a hot mess today, you know, and now I'm saying that, you know, she has me saying that. And I think we really, I don't know about you, but in some ways I was personally enchanted with her vulnerability. And I think also, obviously, she was a great salesperson because she really believed in what she was saying. But I think that's also the downfall. You know, we all have that yin and yang, right? So what I like to say to people when I'm working energetically with this stuff, I always say what opposes exposes. So, you know, you can be a great salesperson, but there also can be an untruth in that of like, constantly questioning yourself, saying, is this true? And I felt that around Shanann as well when I was watching some of this, is that, you know, she would say how much she loved Chris and how great he was and how wonderful he was. And I think that as long as he was being stroked by her, he was on her side. Now, I'm gonna shift a little bit, because I think one of the powerful things I want to say to all of you is that, you know, a lot of us are always looking for our purpose. And that's a lot of the work I do personally. And what I say to people is that we often find our wounding is our purpose. Like, our purpose comes through our wounding. And so, you know, if nothing else, if Shanann's death and these girls lead us to understanding, a deeper understanding of if you will, the perfect storm of what makes these things happen, then it's not lost. And I think we, you know, and I'm saying the universal we, I think we all feel that, oh my gosh, I mean, you know, I can't get over this man doing this. But at the same time, I feel that, you know, there's also a part of me that says, well, if there is a purpose here, then I don't want to let, and this is just me, I don't want to let her life, I don't want her to die in vain. And I think that's how we in some ways feel. And I feel that she can teach us a lot, and I really want to honor that. And by teaching us a lot, you know, we all have like crappy qualities. Do you know, like I'm pushy, you know, I have those moments. I mean, you know, I'm controlling. I mean, who isn't? You know, we're all trying to make sense of our world. And I think even the big gurus out there who go, oh, I love everyone, and go, F this politician. It's like, no, you know, we all have what opposes exposes. And when we look at that, now I'm going to switch gears a little bit and talk about Cindy, because I really made some notes here, which I think you'll find very interesting. Let me, if I can find them. Okay, so I'm going to talk about Cindy, and then I'm going to talk about women who killed their family for men. Actually, maybe I'll do that first because I said it. So let's look at, and I was doing some research on like Diane Downs, if you remember that story, and this has to do with Chris Watts, because actually, a lot of people were saying, you know, NK, right? Nicole was really, I hate to say, you know, I really hate to give her that. I want to just say, call her NK and the best friend, you know, Nicole. Okay. When we look at this, the alpha girlfriend, because I was corrected on that. I really think NK was very alpha. And I think she was puppet stringing Chris just like the mother did. And I do feel that what happened here was, I think she said more than once, God, they're such cute little girls, lovely little girls. I don't want a guy with kids. I think she kind of hinted that. And we have to look at one of the guys posted on my page, he said, well, I know why he did it, but women aren't going to understand. And I think we can understand. I think we all understand the idea of someone like Chris Watts, who purposely ignored her to gain control. I don't know if you all saw the Santa video, okay, where he plays Santa and Bella and Cece are ushered in by Shanann. And she says, oh, did you get the phone? And he says, no, I left it on the thing. And she said, and she goes, oh, he always does this. I knew he'd do this, something like that. And I'm not quoting exactly. But that was the moment when I got, why didn't he remember? And you know what it is? He didn't like what she was making him do in certain times. Not all the time, I'm sure of it, but look at the Santa. He felt like an ass playing Santa. You could see that. And so guys do things, right, for the people they love, but at a certain point, they'll do things like they'll forget the keys. So you can't get in the house for the party that he doesn't want to go to, so there's things, and that's kind of a bad analogy, but like a perfect example is lose the tickets to the ballet because he doesn't really want to go. And so I think that, we have to be more conscious of our partners as we go forward and choosing partners that are more conscious. I think a lot of us don't know how to do that. And that's, for me, what this conversation is about, is making conscious choices and being aware of what's going on with each other. And that starts with me. That starts with me saying, wow, I'm not the best at this, or really owning my own foibles, so to speak, and what I know is my stuff. Like, for example, I was saying to somebody, well, I don't want to date that guy because he's passive aggressive. And they said, oh, really? I said, yeah, he's reflecting in me my passive aggressive behavior. And he's offering me an opportunity to clear it out. I don't want to be with somebody like that because I need to work on myself in that area. So we have to look at our partners as mirrors. Now, if that's the case, our family becomes a mirror too. So when we look at someone like Shanann picking Chris, she needed that mirror. Think about this. Here's this strong woman who's got all this stuff going on. And what happens when she builds this fabulous house for herself? She gets lupus. She gets sick. She starts falling apart. And what comes along? Her knight in shining beta, right? He comes along and he's riding in on his little, pony, and she's got a stable of stallions, and she goes, oh, my hero. And so she has to keep building him up because, alpha women, I know for me, we have trouble being okay with being with a beta guy. And beta guys are great. There's nothing wrong with them. But what happens is, in a sense, and I know I've done this myself, we shame them without recognizing it. And I think that Shanann was doing that without recognizing it. And I really think at the end, she was seeing it. And we only see stuff, by the way, when we're like, pushed down and like praying, when we're going, God, I don't know what I'm doing wrong here. Show me, And I think that obviously it was too late. He was already cheating. He was already gone by the time she recognized that the tide had turned. And I'm not blaming her. And I want to be very clear, because somebody said, don't blame the victim. And I said, I'm not blaming victims. I'm trying to find out what the dynamics are. And the idea is that so we don't repeat it. So when we look at, and I want to go back to, I know a lot of the experts have called Chris Watts family annihilator, and who am I to go up against that? But I think when we look at somebody like Diane Downs, who killed her children to be with this man, we're looking at women that are addicted and really addicted to the idea of being loved at the level they're getting that love. And I think when you look at Chris Watts and you look at the addiction in the family, okay, and addiction, and believe me, I grew up with an alcoholic family. I got that t-shirt to prove it, okay? So when you look at an alcoholic family, and this has to do with Chris again, if you have, I'm just using this as an example, if you have an alcoholic father and an Al-Anon, I want to say an overly controlling mother, right? Then what you're having, and the opposite's true, the alcoholic mother and the controlling father what you're looking at here is the children become half alcoholic thinking and half Al-Anon or non-alcoholic thinking, the para-alcoholic. So I know in me, I have both tendencies. I can be obsessive, like I am with this, the Chris Watts thing. And also, we have to look at the idea that these kinds of tendencies flare up when there's a perfect storm, something underneath it. And believe me when I tell you, this is the tip of the iceberg. I think that this conversation and this worldwide conversation that we're having about this is because it struck a chord in all of us. There is something about this that's not just a family annihilator. This is something deeper. This is a beta male who threw everything away. It's kind of like Narcissus, right? With the bone. He sees in the water another bone, so he drops what he has and then he loses everything. So this is that classic case of Narcissus. So I think that, and I want to say this too, how apropos that, Shanann built this house, she had this illness, and I think it's very strange, when we look at how words come together and meaning comes together, we have to look at how Shanann took on Thrive, right? And I know a couple of people mentioned those patches, and I have to say, he had a couple of them on. I can't imagine, you're not supposed to have more than one. I don't know if they even do anything, I really don't. But I'm just saying that when we look at the idea of Thrive, she was all about that. She wanted to thrive in her life. She wanted to help heal people. And this is the thing, that her trying to help was really, for him, that's not who he wanted to be. Now let's get to Cindy because, otherwise I can be here all night. Okay. So a couple things I want to say about Cindy. Now here's the thing, when we look at Cindy, let's look at when Chris was making his confession. Notice how the father, Ronnie, flew out there. He didn't want to see his mother. Well, we know that. But I think what's more important and more telling is, she kept saying, and I've got to say this, she kept saying why didn't he go for the murder charge? Because obviously, she was trying to say he didn't kill the girls, Shanann did, right? But you see, he, meaning Chris, he knew his mother would make it about her. And, I can't help but feel that Chris, in his silence, this was like his explosion of, this is about me. And that kind of rage, because he used that term very softly with his dad. It was just rage. It was just rage because of what she did to the kids. Well, we know that's the lie, right? We know that, and I'm sorry, but I don't think that woman would hurt her children. First of all, I don't think she had the upper body strength. She already had that neck problem, right? She had like that big surgery. And the truth is that I don't think Shanann could have physically done that. At 15 weeks pregnant, Nicole even said on the way home on the plane, Shanann was in a lot of pain. So that also explains how Chris could have, overcome her very easily. Now, I want to say this, that, and I'm looking at this. Why did Cindy Watts want her son to go to trial? Why? Let's look at this for 1 minute. I want you to just kind of take that in. Any mother, right, would say, well, I want my son to be alive. But she was like, well, he's already dead. And, they're not going to kill him in Colorado. And I'm like thinking to myself, well, I was just like, why would she want a trial? And then it hit me. She kept saying she couldn't see him. They wouldn't let me see him. They wouldn't let me near him. It was the only time she couldn't be in charge. Think about this. If there was a trial, Cindy would have put on her Sunday finest, would have really tried to, obviously she would have, been a witness for the defense, right? And she would have gotten on that stand and said, well, it was obvious that Shanann had to do it. My son would never, and I think that there was this ownership of Chris that she had. Now, when the guys are out there saying, well, I know why he did it, the thing is that there are toxic women. and I know this is a buzzword right now, but I'm going to say it. There are toxic people, okay? So when we look at this mother, it was all about her. She wanted the trial because she wanted to have her day in court where she could talk to her son. She was like, I want the truth. Well, honey, you know the truth. You tried to kill the children with razor blades, if that's true. You tried to put, I don't know if it's peanuts or tree nuts, and there's so many different versions, but she put nuts out when she knew that those children were allergic. Cece, by the way, had to have 3 surgeries on her neck because her windpipe was too small. This child at 3 was suffering from acid reflux. What are we seeing here? Okay, let's get to this energetically. It's all throat issues, isn't it? Right? So of course I do chakra work. 5th chakra, throat issues. What's going on here? Okay, Chris doesn't feel he has a voice. The mother is controlling the voice. The Shanann and the 2 children are smothered, right? No air going in. And Shanann was choked. Now, you ready for the real irony? The sister, and I wrote this down, Jamie, Chris's sister, is a respiratory therapist. So are you seeing this whole thing about breathing and air and life? Breathing life into things and taking life. Even Sandy said, Shanann's mother said, we won't take his life. We believe that that's only God's choice and we're not doing that. Well, it's very interesting. It's like take a life, give a life, and that's all breathing. So a lot of, if we look energetically at that 5th chakra, it's communicating. So what we're really talking about is nobody was communicating the truth. Everybody's got this phony mask on going, I'm cool, or I'm a great dad, or look what a great mother I am. So everybody's like, and I believe the real truth is how much Shanann loved those girls. And I am going to say that. I'm going to say that woman loved those girls more than heaven and earth. And I am sorry, but I do not believe that the pain she was in, her neck was hurting, she was not feeling well that night. I do not believe she had the body strength to kill them. And I don't buy what Chris said. So that said, one of the things that this whole conversation is about with all of us, I believe, is breaking patterns. It's about seeing things from a perspective that we're not looking at. We're not looking deep enough. We're so busy going, I don't want to blame that person. When it's not about blame, it's about responsibility. It's about responding with ability. It's about looking at something and going, wow, okay, and not making it define you. See, I think a lot of people take this, like somebody was really upset with me on the feed, and they said, you're really blaming, and you're just, another person who's, doing this for money. And I'm thinking, yeah, but my channel's not monetized. I'm not making any money. So it was kind of funny to me, but at the same time, I didn't take it in, so I didn't have to work it out. It doesn't mean anything about me. It reflects that person. So when we're making these statements, it's really our internal upset that something's not right. So when we're blaming somebody else, it's because something in us is identifying with it. And I think that we all identify with each of these characters. And when I say characters, the people in the plot, when I say plot, if we look at this as a story, I mean, somebody wrote down, and this was actually kind of weird. They wrote down, this is obviously all a hoax. And it's like, okay, all right, dude, just go smoke another bowl. Like, I'm just not in that with you. But, for the most part, there have been some really fantastic videos on this. And I think that it goes to, one more time, this is not sensationalism. A lot of people are saying, oh, another person, another expert. And I'm like, I'm no expert. Like, I'm sorry. I only know what I know. And I can't possibly know. And people say to me, well, you're a psychic. How could you not help them? And it's, there was a story. My father took a plane once, and he was scheduled on this one plane that was going to crash. And that did crash actually. And I kept saying, I feel bad. Don't go. Just, I'll meet you in Cleveland. I'll go to your, because it was high school reunion. Lots of young kids will be there. I was the only one. But I went to his 39th reunion or something. And I'm sharing this with you because it relates. And I got off the plane and I looked at my dad and he said not a word. And we didn't speak about it. And one morning we went for a walk and it was early morning and it was just one of those mornings where the dew is out and it's crisp and we were walking and he said, did you know? And I said, no, And he said, it's a shame because you could have warned them, And that's the thing is that our gifts, all of our intuitive gifts work differently. And so when we look at somebody like Shanann, who is an empath, she knew what was going on with Chris. That's the difference between an empath and a narcissist. So when we look at Chris standing there and going, yeah, I have no inclination. Inclination? I looked that up, okay? It's a leaning. It's a leaning. It means leaning into something like I'm not inclined to know. Well, wait a minute, though. You do have an inclination because you made up the story about the play date. So that is an inclination. So it's an inkling. He had an inkling. I have no inclination. Yeah, you did. And see, that's what busted him with Nicole, the best friend. One of the things I want to talk about, and it's interesting because one of the fables in my toolkit, and believe me, I'm just sharing this with you because this came from a near-death experience in my life, and there's a quote here that I want to share with you that it's about grief. Grief is love without a place to go, and it's all about the particular fable is all about death and the energy of it, and how we can only grieve as deep as we loved. And if you look at some of the pundits have been saying that Chris was Googling at the end, what is love? How do you know you're loved? What does it feel like? So for him to have no grief meant that he can't experience love. And what happens is that he wasn't allowed to experience love. So in a way, Cindy Watts said, this sociopathic behavior, yeah, it was learned by you. And the other thing that's interesting about that is when we look at grief, okay, as an overview of this family, and you can say, because I know some people say, well, you should look at her family. And it's like, I think we have to get away from that conversation around blame. Like, well, her family's this and his, and I think it's more about the grief energy. When we look at all these people and we look at who really experienced grief, and you look at, because I'm sorry, but you can see grief in someone's face. I lost a dog in October, and you grieve. You just grieve. You're like, the wind is knocked out of your sails. Let's look at the characters in this play. Nicole. Oh my gosh, Nicole Atkinson was panicked. You could see it all over her face. You could see her crying when she was later interviewed. This woman is in utter grief. She loved Shanann. So we look at Shanann's mother on the phone right away with Nicole. They were talking. They were trying to figure things out. And you can only hear little snippets of it, but, Shanann's mother was on the phone with the police in one of those, in the very beginning when the first cop came. Coonrand, I can't remember his name. Anyway, he was the first officer on the scene, and you could hear some of her conversation. So she was definitely on it. So we look at Shanann's mother, she was in panic, in grief. Shanann's father, can you doubt? Look at this man. So we know that Shanann's family had a capacity for love. Now, when you get into, and we can use the term dysfunctional, which is a buzzword, okay? It's just like, what does it mean? Everybody's dysfunctional in some way. But when we look at how the disease of alcoholism fits together like a Rubik's Cube, or any of these issues that kind of were bouncing back and forth, when we look at the idea that Chris was born into this family that, have you seen the sister cry? I haven't even seen the sister. Have you seen his father cry? No. In fact, when the boy admitted, and I'm talking about Chris as a boy because he's just this, he's gone. And I want to say to you all, some people have said evil, the devil, blah, blah, blah. And I know that's kind of like a Christian framework. Well, I do think that when we get to such a peak, it is like a devil taking over us. So I can see how people would say that. But when you look at Ronnie in the interrogation room with Chris, and he didn't want Cindy there, remember? I know I said that, but here's Ronnie rubbing his son's back. Do you know what? I've seen a lot of interrogations. And when I say that, I'm kind of like a true crime, kind of like crimophile. I like seeing how people think and work. I did not see grief in Ronnie's face. In fact, he wasn't facing us, but I could feel his energy. He was just like, it's okay, son, it's okay. And it's like, he did not express grief. I think, and I know people have said, he talked about it with his parents. I don't think he talked about it with his parents. I think his father wasn't shocked because the father, now let's look at the careers. The mother, Chris's mother, wanted Chris to outshine the father. And this is very typical, by the way, in an addictive family. You get a controlling mom, right? Because that's that controlling side. And often, by the way, the alcoholic is more loved than the person who doesn't drink. Because the person who doesn't drink, it can be the crazy person, right? So we can look at, because they're trying to control that person. So we look at Cindy. Now let's look at Chris's life. He was into cars. He fixed cars with his dad. His dad is a mechanic and he works at a dealership. Chris is a mechanic and he wanted to be, I think it's called a pit boss, so forgive me if it's not that, but he wanted to be on the racing circuit as a mechanic. Now, what is that in hierarchy? That's above daddy. So Cindy can then browbeat her husband even more by saying, well, our son did better than you did. And this is also a controlling thing. This is a way people use a child as a ping pong. And Chris got out of it, and it was almost like out of the frying pan and into the fire, because we're always going to create circumstances where we are marrying or meeting or being with our parents. And the deal is that we have to grow up in that. I remember being in a relationship years ago where I said to somebody, I don't know if we're going to make it, but I would really like to stay here until we grow through this issue. And he said, yeah, I agree with you. And we didn't actually make it, but as a couple, but we really grew through being able to communicate in a new way. So what I want to say to you is that, what we're looking at is something that people did not learn how to behave. They did not learn what real love was, because you see, they didn't have it. They didn't have anything to base it on, because it was all about, I have to steal it. I have to get it. I'm not enough. I'm not going to get it. So when we look at all this and we go back to, grief is love without a place to go. Who do you think in this situation was grieving? And I think you're going to be surprised when you really meditate on it. I'm going to invite you to just kind of look at this and go, who did you see grieving? Because there were people that were in grief. The brother, Shanann's brother, and people were like, oh, he's this, he's that. Yeah, except he was also grieving. And I'm not saying that he's some angel, because, and that's the thing I think we're learning more and more, is people don't have to be angels. We just have to get to the what this means so that we can shift it, because our lives are accumulation of what we make meaning of. Something Chris made meaning of made him and drove him to kill his wife and daughters. And I'm going to venture to say that he never felt love. I think he mimicked it. I think he parroted it. I think he tried to play the role, which was perfect, because that was what Shanann thought she needed. Because obviously she was a successful woman. Obviously she had that, but she didn't feel good enough unless she had a man by her side. And she used that man as a crutch. And this is what happens, and I see this happen a lot when people don't have an understanding of who they're really with. So I hope this gave you some food for thought, and please make your comments below. They do inspire me to, continue the conversation, and I'm going to send everybody lots of blessings. And I'd like to send out a prayer to Shanann and her children and their eternal souls, and may they shine brightly in our hearts to teach us what we need to know, and may they become the angels that break this devastating pattern and help us all heal and find solutions to it before it's too late for the next family. God bless everyone, and I hope to see you again. Please leave your comments below, and I will respond if I can, And if you like the video, like it, and feel free to subscribe, and I'm here for you. Thanks.